Joining us now to discuss this is orthopedic sports medicine surgeon at Mount Sinai and team physician for the U.S. ski and snowboard teams, Dr. Robert Parisian. Doctor, thank you for being with us today. It's great to have you back. What is blood washing, and is it even effective?
Well, great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. So apheresis, or blood washing, or we can also call it blood filtering, is this process in which you remove blood from the body and then you split it down into its different factors. And so our blood is really composed of, not getting too technical, but red cells, white cells, plasma, and platelets. And that's basically what they're doing here, is breaking that blood down into certain products. And we have used apheresis and blood filtering and other management of other conditions over the years. So for example, patients with sickle cell disease have abnormal red blood cells. And so we've used this process to treat them. People with leukemia who have increased amounts of white blood cells. Same thing, we've used this process. Or other people who have clotting disorders or thrombotic disorders. So this is a very well-known process. It takes about 2 to 4 hours depending on what the treatment is for. And then you remove those elements, you filter those elements out, and then you reintroduce the blood to the body.
So it's safe.
Yes, it has been safe. Especially it's done in controlled environments by centers who are very used to doing this and do a high volume of this management. But for long COVID, this is really a new advent of this treatment.
So why are we seeing patients go overseas to get this, and why is it so expensive?
So I think to take a quick step back is that when we think about COVID and we think about long COVID symptoms, first of all, long COVID is real. Long COVID is real. It's here to stay, and it's going to be something that we're going to have to manage moving forward. But there's so much about it that we just don't know. And so when patients are being infected with COVID, we know, or some studies have suggested, that there are sort of these microclots or these microscopic clots that are forming. Now, these may just be a marker of someone who has COVID. It might not actually be something that's causing long COVID. And so again, we don't know that yet. And so we still need to investigate this. So these folks are going overseas to get this treatment to treat for these microscopic clots that, once again, I just said that we don't even know if these are really causing long COVID yet.
Okay. So what are the symptoms of long COVID? How do people know if they have it, and what treatments exist right now for patients with long COVID?
So that's a great question, because that's the challenge, is that long COVID doesn't mean one thing. So basically people are having symptoms for, let's say, greater than a month after having been infected by COVID. And it may be those who have severe infections, those who are vaccinated, those who weren't vaccinated, those who had very limited to no symptoms. Everyone appears to be getting or being exposed to the risk of getting it. The World Health Organization suggests that 10 to 20% of people who had COVID are getting it. Now that can be anything from fatigue, which is reported to be about 80% of patients who say they're experiencing fatigue, brain fog, cognitive issues with memory, what we call post-exertional malaise. So basically, if you're working out, you have decreased capacity and you're a lot more tired after, and then you can have sleep disturbances. So again, a whole constellation of symptoms packaged into what we're classifying as long COVID. And if you can imagine, if you're having these things, these are having a significant debilitating detrimental effect on your personal life, your work life. And so then we're seeing patients are now suffering from anxiety, depression, secondary to these long COVID symptoms that just are persisting.
It just compounds the problem.
Exactly.
Where would you say right now we're at in the pandemic, with particularly with BA.5, and what sort of, I guess, trends are we seeing in terms of where the COVID-19 pandemic is going from here?
As I've stated before, to define a pandemic, you have increased levels of disease globally, and that's where we are. But I think we've really certainly moved into the endemic management of COVID. When we talk about BA.5 or other variants, we do know that we will have BA.5 and we will have future variants that are going to arise, because that's the nature of viruses. They mutate and they create variants. What we are seeing with BA.5 and others is that they may be more contagious, meaning it's easier to spread from one person to the next, but they're less virulent, or they're less harmful in the long run. And so, as I've said before, and many experts are out there saying that we need just to continue to look at, yes, case volume, but most importantly, hospitalization rates and death rates. And as long as those hospitalization rates and death rates aren't spiking and aren't climbing as we continue to open up society as we see, then I think that we're in a good place moving forward, but need to keep an eye on that.
Where are we at with antiviral treatments? I know you and I have talked about Paxlovid, the Pfizer pill. Does that seem to be successful on the market right now?
So it's interesting because, as we said before, Paxlovid is very important when you're in the very early stages of an infection. So that is also muddying the waters, I guess, a little bit when you're trying to investigate these and investigate how effective they are. So some patients may be taking them later on in the process. Also, with the new variants, we always need to make sure that these antivirals are effective against the new variants that come about. And so I've talked about before about when people say they got the flu vaccine and then they get the flu and they wonder why that happened. Well, it's because you probably got a new variant of that flu vaccine.
Right.
And so we always have to see if they're going to be as effective against the new variants that arise.
What do you think is the most effective vaccine right now to combat COVID-19 or perhaps the new variants that we're seeing?
Again, so the research is still being developed, and we're still trying to determine which ones are the most effective and how many boosters and what the booster future may look like. So as you know, we're even just rolling out vaccines and boosters to younger ages, but it's really to be seen as far as what that's going to look like for the future. Is it going to be a flu vaccine that we take every single year, or are these new variants going to prove to be just more contagious but less virulent over time? So again, the data and the research is still being done on that. So I don't think we have any definitive answers at this point in time.
Dr. Robert Parisien, great to have you back. We appreciate you being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.